Hi, this is Alex, and this is another video in our series about how to be in a long-term relationship and how to marry a Vietnamese woman. And on this short video, I'd like to share with you a topic which is food, and then also some of the adjustments and some of the things you want to know about, as I said, as you're going to be in a long-term relationship and eventually marry a Vietnamese woman.
But first, how would you like an ongoing supply of free reports, helpful resources and unique cultural insights for meeting, dating and marrying a Vietnamese woman? Too easy. Just take a quick moment to subscribe. And click the bell icon. And you'll never miss out again.
Now, for me, this topic came up very, very early. As you can tell, I'm Vietnamese, and having been with Nessa now going on close to 9-10 years. One of the things that came up very early, and I have to be very candid with her, is that even though I was raised on Vietnamese food, I have certain food allergies that make it very difficult for me to eat a lot of Vietnamese dishes. So very specifically, when I'm getting all the gory details, I can't eat spicy food, oily food, or fried food. Now, Vietnamese food is not as hot as Thai food, and I've lived in Thailand as well. So there's a lot of dishes, right? And Vanessa loves going out to eat. I mean, that's one of her, big things. And so I accommodate that, right? But then, like I said, I had to basically adjust, she had to adjust a little bit, and so did I, because of the fact that, like I said, even though I grew up on Vietnamese food, somewhere along the way in my mid-20s, something in my body changed. And so a lot of the food that I grew up with, I couldn't eat anymore. So like right now I eat spicy food, I have, digestive issues with that. Likewise, fried food and also oily food. Now, Vietnamese food, fortunately, many of the dishes I enjoy are not as oily as, say, for example, many Vietnamese dishes are not necessarily prepared, in deep oil, right? There's a small handful of them, but Vanessa doesn't enjoy those anyway, so that hasn't been an issue. Fried food, that occasionally becomes kind of a problem. So I say this because that's a digestive issue for me. Now, as on a separate matter, setting aside my digestive issues, there's also certain foods that I didn't grow up with, as she did. And so some of those food, I find the taste for me was quite strong. And so when we, cook here, occasionally she'll actually cook like a less spicy version of it, or she may create cook a separate dish for me. Now, we know a lot of couples that this actually does happen. And we also know many couples where this is not an issue. So, as you can imagine, any long-term relationship, or certainly in marriage, right? It's an issue of, give and take and compromises. So there's certain dishes that I grew up with that now, because I haven't had it in so long, it's the taste is very, very strong, and I just prefer not to eat it. I can eat it, but out of basically courtesy for a host. But if left to myself, I probably wouldn't eat it, right? So more specifically, like there are certain fruits that are very popular in certain parts of Vietnam. For example, durian has very strong flavor. In fact, Vanessa has. She finds the taste very strong as well. So that was actually, for me, that was a limiting belief, right? I was kind of like, oh man, like if I'm going out with somebody, I'm being in a long-term relationship, she's gonna have, this is gonna be a big issue and everything. If I hit it and I didn't confront it head on, then yes, it would be an issue, because she's gonna wonder like what's going on, right? Now in your case, you're gonna probably, with this video, the help of this video, you're gonna know that going in. Now, if you want to kind of get up to speed on some of the, some of the food that are popular in Vietnam, then you're going to want to check out the other videos in this channel, right? Now, if you haven't been to Vietnam or you haven't studied the culture closely, you may not realize this, but even though Vietnam's a very small country, I think it's like maybe smaller than the state of California, it's got about 90-some million people. It's a very, very densely populated country, right? And even though the landmass-wise it's very small, it has arguably more cultures in that small country than the U.S. has, right? It's way more, what's the word I'm looking for here? It's not as homogenous, right? There's actually different dialects of Vietnamese and certainly different flavors. So my heritage is from the north, right? Vanessa's more from the south, and so there's certain dishes that she eats that a lot of times I'm just completely unfamiliar with, and because she's more familiar with Vietnamese culture on a broader level. She's much more familiar with the foods I like than vice versa. Because I came here, again, as I mentioned in another video, when I was very young. So even as a Vietnamese couple, right, there's times where it's like, okay, what is that dish and what is it you're eating, right? So I don't want to kind of spook you or basically scare you about this. Now, as somebody that's entering this relationship, that's something you want to know, right? You may just want to be upfront or say, like some dishes, you may just find, well, I find the taste really strong. And you may ask you to basically, excuse me, cut back a little bit on the flavor. And that's perfectly fine as well. So, so I'll give you a specific example, okay? Like one of the most popular Vietnamese dishes that's prevalent in the U.S., probably the dish that's most associated with Vietnam is this dish called pho. Technically, it's pronounced pho, but let's just call it pho, right? Which is the English pronunciation of that word. Depending on which store you go to, even in the same city, different chefs or different cooks are going to cook it differently, depending on how they were raised, probably by their parents or in the region that they're in. So that's a very granular example of what I'm talking about, right? So when Vanessa and I go out and eat that specific dish, we will still pick one restaurant over another because of how it's prepared, right? So this is more common than you may think. Likewise, let's just use, for example, a US dish, right? Barbecue. Again, I'm not a barbecue, expert, but as far as I know, there's KC style barbecue, which is very sweet or sweet and spicy. There's, I spent many years in Austin. So Austin's got its own flavor, and I believe North Carolina's got its own flavor. So there's like 3 or 4 different types of version, right? Just as there's different types of pizza. Now, Vietnam being around for a lot longer, it's going to have, probably even more extreme version of the same type of dish. And so even when we eat, even when we eat at home, we have kind of seasoned differently depending on whether we have, guests that are all Vietnamese or we have maybe folks that are not all Vietnamese, right? So we adjust the flavor even when we have guests. And so this is just something that you just want to have a sit down and, so depending on if you're going out, if she's from the States, if she's living in the States or she's back in Vietnam, more likely if she's in Vietnam, the food is going to be a little bit stronger, right? So let me explain what I mean by that. So a lot of restaurant owners, if they know that a significant portion of their customer base is not Vietnamese, they've already adjusted the flavor for that audience because some of the flavor may be too strong, meaning that they maybe cut back a little bit on the spices and things like that. Okay, so why is that important? Well, the thing I'm trying to emphasize, like this already happens and you may not even realize it, right? So for example, if you already like Vietnamese food and you go to a Vietnamese restaurant, you may not realize that the chef is already taking that to account when they prepare the dish for you and you didn't even have to ask them. All right. Now, some chefs are kind of like, a little bit, they're going to say, look, we're not going to make any adjustment. It's going to be prepared the way that it is. But some of the cooks, some of the restaurant owners, if they're in an area where they have a mix of people from Vietnam and also maybe people from other ethnicity, they've already adjusted the flavor a little bit. All right. So for example, my brother, when he visits me, he has very specific restaurants that he prefers because he knows that restaurant, because he's a little bit older than me, as you can imagine, he knows that he wants to go to certain restaurants that caters to more, for lack of a better word, a more Vietnamese palate, right? I, on the other hand, find that very strong. And so I have to ask the chef to cut back because for me, what's really delicious for him is way too strong for me. All right. So I'm telling you this as somebody who was, grew up and, have many Vietnamese brothers and a sister, and obviously, my heritage is Vietnamese and everybody around me, many of my friends are still Vietnamese. That's something I have to do, even for myself. So this is perfectly reasonable, in a relationship to ask them to basically adjust the food a little bit. And I'm just going to be very upfront, right? There's going to be certain dishes that you may never find appealing. There are many, many Vietnamese dishes that I just flat out won't eat because I wasn't raised on it, and I find, the texture or something just not that appealing, right? So for example, I really didn't eat much seafood growing up. Well, seafood's a very, very big portion of the Vietnamese diet. And so, Vanessa may like, certain types of seafood. I'm okay with shrimp, crab, and things like that. But there's a lot of seafood animals that I'm just not that fond of. And that's, we're perfectly okay with that as long as I'm upfront with her, right? Otherwise, we go to a restaurant that's they only serve this thing, and I'm sitting there saying, I can't eat anything here. It's it's going to cause a scene, or at least, it's probably not probably the most pleasant outing you can have, right? So as I'm wrapping up this video, I just kind of want to share with you that, because we have people say like, well, what if I can't eat her food or vice versa? Because when we first immigrated to the States, I'm being very transparent here. One of the biggest things that my parents at the time, I'm now my parents' age when they came here, one of the biggest concerns they have is like, can they eat a Western diet? Because when we came to the States in the 70s, there weren't any Vietnamese restaurant in the city, in the first 10 or 12 years of the cities, because we live in small cities in the Midwest, there weren't any Vietnamese restaurants. And so my parents were really concerned that can they actually eat the diet, because they didn't grow up on an American diet, right? So that was a very, very big concern for them. So this should be something that you want to know up front, right? Let's not, kind of sweep it under the rug and say, look, I'm going to be okay, I'll adjust and everything. It's perfectly fine to tell ourselves, look, there's certain foods that I'm going to take a certain amount of time to adjust to, and there's just certain dishes that you may never find appealing at all. Likewise, like most people from Vietnam, I'm being very upfront here again, unless they came over when they were very young or they have a lot of Western friends, a steak is really not that appealing because a Vietnamese diet doesn't have that much meat in it. So, some of the most elegant, some of the finest restaurants in the States are high-end steak restaurants. I'm going to make a very broad statement here, but many folks don't find that a steak that appealing. They'll eat it, right? It's beef, of course, it's good, but having not grown up on basically very large portions of beef, it's not that attractive to a Vietnamese palate. So as I'm wrapping this up, I just kind of want to share with you that it's perfectly okay for you to not to pass on certain food, and for that matter, even certain fruits, right? Like a certain fruits like durian, it's a very much an acquired taste, and I'm telling you this, that's true for me. That's true for Vanessa, and it's true for a lot of our friends, right? Because that's one of the jokes, right? It's like, oh, do I have to eat durian? And if you never had it, trust me, it's a very, very strong flavor. It's very much an acquired taste. And so that's something that, that you just want to have an upfront conversation with her about, right? I mean, right now, we've been together long enough now where it's rarely, maybe on an entire year, basically that topic comes up once or twice. But on the day-to-day, it's almost now we just kind of we learn each other's preferences for food, and so we know that we go out to a certain restaurant, the other one may not be keen on eating out. Then one of us just calls the other friends, or one of us eats out ahead of time, or when we go there, we try to find something on the menu that we can eat, right? But that that now that we kind of know each other's food restriction and preferences, it's not as big an issue. All right. So I hope this has been helpful. Like I said, obviously you're not together just for the food, right? But food is something that we do multiple times a day. And if this is an area of concern, I want to kind of assure you that it is addressable, and it's a give and take, right? Who knows? I mean, I have many Western friends that eat Vietnamese dishes that I don't find that appealing, and they love it, right? And I also have Western friends that I'll eat certain dishes, but these other ones are a little bit too, for lack of a better word, too different from what they usually eat, and that's fine too. Okay, so this is Alex. I hope you find this video, valuable. And as I said, if you want to know more about different dishes, kind of go watch some of the other videos that we had in our channel, right? Which kind of shows you different types of dishes in different regions of Vietnam. All right. So just broadly speaking, basically the people in the north and the south, and people along the coast, there's it's much more granular than that, but just broadly speaking, that's like three very distinct flavors. There's some overlap, but people that really enjoy food, they can tell which region of the Vietnam the food is from. Me, I'm not a food guy, so I have like a handful of dishes I love eating, and I just kind of eat that over and over again, right? So from a food perspective, my palate is fairly bland and vanilla, right? Vanessa is a foodie. There's literally, she loves, every type of food dishes there is. And so for her, she's very, she knows like different types of dishes or whatever. So if you love food, then hey, consider that an adventure you two can explore together. If food's not your thing, just find 5 or 10 dishes that, you love, and just have her prepare that. And when you go out, just make sure you eat those dishes, and everything will take care of itself. All right. So again, my name is Alex. I've enjoyed taking this opportunity to share this with you. If you find this, please, share what you like about this video, or any feedback you provide below this video. And if you find this valuable, please, share this with a couple of your friends. We love to have this, our channel spread. All right. So until next time, this is Alex signing off on behalf of myself and Vanessa.